Hello and welcome to Kimboshi Radio, where Nick, we are back again, and Bonsuke o'clock?
It's my favorite time. I love when the Bonsuke... Honestly, I think I like the Bonsuke dropping more than the beginning of the tournament because it's just so much more fun and like it's just a lot more guesswork for us.
I mean, same here, and like, we're nerds, and so that's why this is the exciting part. But it's the same, like people say that the best part of the NBA season is the trade deadline or stuff like that, and so it's like, yeah, for sumo nerds like me and you, it's Bonsuke time.
Exactly. Also, apologies to anyone listening if my audio or anything sounds weird. I have a super janky setup. I just moved, so everything's just on the floor loose.
It's fine. It's fine. You are just dedicated to the cause. You are the consummate sumo professional.
I just had to make sure we got all this valuable information out.
Oh, obviously, yes. I mean, the people could not be denied. But speaking of the valuable information and your dedication to the cause, another dedicated man, Terunofuji, is this his last dance?
God, I think at this point, because you talked about he's looking at hip surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Even he had alluded to this being his final tournament, which it makes me nervous. If he shows up like he did, I think in January, he'll come in, he'll wreck everybody. It'll be great, and it would be a really nice send off for him, because that would be his 10th, right?
Correct. And I'm with you. It's like, yeah, I think he didn't he go on the record like a couple years ago saying he wanted 11 or something. But like, if he gets to double digits, then yeah.
Yeah, then he can go. He can he can get surgery. He doesn't have to worry about essentially everything kind of weighing down on him or preventing him from being able to take care of his body because of how long he'd be out. And I think, but we just have to hope then that he shows up and performs the way we want him to.
Right, and obviously he wants to perform at that level as well. I'm curious. The big thing for me is like, does he? Man, it's tough because the last two times he won a basho, I have been advocating for him to retire, like go out on a high note, and he hasn't done it. And it's because he's been pushing for this final goal, whether in his head that's recalibrated to just double digits or whether it was a different goal, doesn't matter. He keeps coming back, and we've seen every time his tournament after a tournament that he wins is abysmal and he pulls out. So like I'll say it again, but fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, and fool me a third time, I'm just an idiot, which we all knew. But like, I'm like, surely if he gets 10, he retires. But then the question is, if he doesn't get the 10, does he try to stick it out for another one when there have been these grumblings coming out of the stable that he wants May to be the last one? I don't know.
So I kind of agree where I think if it's his last tournament, he's going to throw everything in his whole body into it. Like, even if it risks injury, he'll go because it's his last one.
Yep.
And like you said, there's that, which I believe he can do it. He can come through. He can clean house easy. But if he doesn't win, will he come back, or does he at that point call it? It would be hard for him, I think, to go out on a loss. Like if he has to drop out and gets another like 8 and 7,
Yeah.
I think that would be hard for him mentally to drop out.
Yeah.
Or to have that be your final. But
It would just be so rough though, because like he reportedly turned down surgery that would have had him miss May and potentially come back in July for Nagoya. So like it's just crazy to me the idea that like, well, certainly if he comes back, he's not coming back for Nagoya, right? Because like then it's just you feel like an idiot because he had the chance to potentially come into Nagoya healthier. Instead, he's going to come back probably with even more injuries, even less likely to win it if he doesn't get it here. Like again, I just feel like it's the time, and like you said, I think he's going to. I hate this form, but I think he's going to destroy his body and try to get this one.
yeah, I agree. He'll have essentially, I guess, your mentality. That one is that even if you get injured, you have forever to recover at that point. And I hope it goes really well for him.
I do too. I think that there's no way there's lots of guys I'm going to be rooting for, and once the tournament starts unfolding, we'll see the storylines that are exciting to us. But from Jump Street, I think it's hard for me to not be rooting for Teru with an eye towards this being his swan song.
Exactly.
Yeah, but right underneath him, so I mean, let's get into it. So challengers and stuff like that. At Ozeki, Hoshoryu is now considered by the JSA the best of the four Ozeki. He is basically Ozeki 1 East, and then right behind him is Kotozakura. The name change finally happened, so there you go. And then underneath them is Takakeisho and Kirishima. Kirishima still struggling because of these injuries. I don't know if he's healthy. Takakeisho, I well, is he competing in this? I guess I don't know either way, but I think I kind of expected him to just sit this whole one out because his I think his was it his pec or his bicep? I think it's his pectoral. He said is torn or something like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, it might be Hoshoryu. What are you thinking of this Ozeki crop?
So I think it's kind of funny because we've always been a little bit uh, cooler temperature wise, I think, on Hoshoryu than most people. Um, because he's not always the highest performer, but he's clearly just being steady, solid performer is getting him just about to the top.
Hmm. And you're right. Like
Um,
it's the same thing that happened with him at his at Sekiwake. Like we were disappointed at the eights or nines or whatever, the grindy wins, but like at the end of the day, he was never dropping the ball.
no, and personally, I like Kirishima better. But is it better for this sport? Is it better to have constant, steady, positive wins, or you go like the crazy highs and then super lows?
Mm-hmm. And I previously was with you as well. I'm not sure if I'm recalibrating how I think, but traditionally why I had liked Kirishima more is the guy was much more in the Tamawashi vein, the Iron Man, like always healthy, always showing up kind of thing from my perspective. Um, and now, like, that's definitely gone because he has been so banged up at this point for, is it three Basho in a row?
Yes.
So like I don't know. Like yeah, it's interesting how that falls out because we've got our tier of I guess healthy Ozekis and then our tier of I guess damaged Ozekis.
Yeah, and obviously Kirishima's not quite in as bad a shape as Takakeisho, which he's another one I'm curious when. I mean, we always talk about it, like when he'll retire, but it'll depend entirely, I suppose, on at this point where he can get his elder stock.
Yep.
But I think of all the Ozeki, I think they all need to watch out for Kotozakura.
Yeah, me too.
He's solidly performed just like Hoshoryu, but at a slightly higher win rate,
Hmm.
and he hasn't been injured. I don't think in a very long time.
Yeah, it was I believe it was 2021 when he had an extremely bad knee injury that frankly terrified me about the prospects of his career going forward. But he has had a slow, steady rise. I think he's put the reps on it. He seems to have done well in the recovery because just looks good.
Yeah, I think depending on Terunofuji's health, I think Kotozakura would be more likely to take it with the of all of the Ozeki.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. And again, we've talked about it before, so we don't necessarily need to rehash it. But for instance, if you are newer to sumo, um, he has the size, man. Like Hoshoryu has done a great job putting on weight because wrestlers will tell you, like smaller guys. I've been watching some interviews of smaller guys because they tend to be my favorites or whatever. But what they talk about is how hard it is to put weight on. And I do think it's because sumo wrestlers are trying to put on good weight, right? Like I do want to say every time I don't know if you get this too or whatever, but like when we talk to people who don't watch sumo that we watch sumo and they're like, yeah, a bunch of fat guys or whatever, and I just kind of like roll my eyes and I'm like, yep, yep. But sumo wrestlers try to put good weight on. Like they try to gain weight by eating chankonabe, like a very protein rich like tofu, chicken, cabbage, whatever, like stew. They don't try to put on weight by drinking sugar calories. Like they're not just sitting there mainlining Mountain Dew. Um, and so these smaller guys talk about how hard it is to put weight on, and I think it's because they're not putting on cheat calories. You know what I mean? But Hoshoryu's done a great job now of building his weight up. If you look back at Hoshoryu in 2021 and Hoshoryu now, very different bodies, and I commend him for that. But the difference between him and Kotozakura is Kotozakura's frame is enormous, and he's just always had the frame to hang that weight on. So he's just been bigger, longer, so he's kind of more comfortable in that body. Is the way I would say it.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, it's part of the reason Terunofuji's been so dominant is he's so big, solid size, but like in a healthy way. So when they hit him, most people can't move him.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, exactly. Um I am excited. Dude, have you been watching Fujikura Be, the Korean like physical 100 show on Netflix?
I love Physical 100. I've seen the
So
first season and it's so good.
yes, second season is a banger as well, but I'm going to spoil this for, well, it's not a spoiler. I'm just telling you guys, the production crew are now making an Asia-wide Physical Bay. I don't know when it's coming out, next year, the year after, whatever. But in the little promo, they had like a dude who was doing like Muay Thai. They had just basically showing a bunch of different athlete like stills of athletes from different kinds of physical endeavors in different Asian countries, and one of them was sumo. So I'm like, oh, who you gonna get? And this is really cool. I hope whoever they get is really determined to shake off that quote unquote fat guy myth. You know what I mean? Like, it's not gonna be an active wrestler, which is a bummer. But I'm like, Ishiura? Gonna be someone like Ishiura who's just like a stacked monster and could just like and I say Ishioda specifically because his coaching career is a little bit in flux right now. But anyway, I digress, but I'm interested about that because if imagine if they got someone like Daisho, who very much looks like a fat guy, but is just a stacked monster. You know what I mean?
Yes. Or even somebody like Hoshoryu would be the perfect for
Oh,
that.
Hoshoryu would be absolutely golden. It's just there's no way they get an active Ozeki to do it.
No, no.
Yeah.
But I guess before we move on to the Ozeki, I do like to always point out that Takakeisho of all the Ozeki is the only one who has wins against Terunofuji. I think between the other three, it's something like 0 and 30.
That's a bananas stat.
So that's why it depends heavily on how healthy Terunofuji is.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Um, and I mean, we can both agree he's not going to be healthy. But
No,
his last U
is healthy
show,
enough.
exactly. His last U show, he was maybe 75%, something like that, and got it done. So I don't know.
I believe in him.
Me too. But beyond that, so the rest of the Sanyaku, maybe these sort of more outside contenders, we do have some slight shakeups around here, I guess. Wakamoto Haru is back at Sekiwake, which I think I mean, we can talk about it if you want, but he's just back where he belongs. We all know his style. He's incredibly physical. You got to watch yourself on the Tachi-ai, and he's going to grab your belt and frog hop you out of there chest to chest. Um, now that Tochinoshin has retired, he might be the strongest chest to chest wrestler in the division, I think. I don't know who's
I
better than
think
him.
so.
Yeah.
No,
Um
I don't think there's anybody who can compete with that.
yeah, but Abi's up there too. So now we have this contrasting style cuz we all know what Abi does. He's going to extend those arms, he's going to get you with the tsupari, he's going for your throat and he going to move laterally.
I do think it's gonna be a tough one for Abi. He's my boy, but he's been at Sekiwake before, and it was a very brief stint.
Mhm.
He's a solid Megashira 2 to Komusubi, so I would love to see him do well up here, but I think, man, looking at the crowd around him, it's gonna be a tough one.
Yeah, exactly. I think Sekiwake is his peak, and he deserves Sekiwake. But you're totally right that he doesn't always perform at Sekiwake, and maybe that's matchup based because he's relatively predictable in style. Again, we've talked about it before. It's fine to be predictable when you're either the best or like top five at the thing that people are predicting. Um, but it is still nevertheless limiting. Um,
Yes.
Right, so we'll see. But perhaps more interesting are the Komusubis, and we're gonna get to Onosato in a second. But Asanoyama is finally back to Sanyaku, but I'm hearing grumblings that he's hurt again. Which here's the thing: like a couple years ago when he came back, this is what we were talking about, man. Which sucks because I friggin' love Asanoyama. Um, he his body is he's not 27 anymore, and so this is just going to happen.
No, and I hate being right about these. These are the ones that I love being proven wrong on, but I think it's the same thing. Like he's just had to basically claw his way back up to the top where honestly, I don't even know if do you think he'd even still be active if he hadn't lost his Ozeki rank at this point?
Ooh, I think
Like,
so, but it would depend. The reason I think so is like, look at Takeyumi's situation. You know what I mean? Like, he hasn't hung it up, so I'm
mm,
sure Asanoyama would have had some reason to keep going. I think Takeyumi's a couple years older than him too, so he had potentially even more reason to retire. Although Takeyumi is relatively recently married, maybe that was a factor in him wanting to extend his career. I don't know. But the reason I think you bring up a great point is that when he was serving his suspension, not right away off the bat, but I think kind of when the gravity of what was befalling him kind of like that mist came down over his eyes, he it's on record. He asked his stable master for permission to quit and was denied. Like, there's this weird dance in sumo. You can't retire without your stable master's permission, but obviously like I mean, Ichinojo left,
Yes.
so you can do whatever you want. But yeah, so you're right. And now I think the thing keeping him going is that idea of getting back to Ozeki, which we would all love to see that comeback story. But I don't know that there's a happy ending. The same way that I mean, Takayasu's my favorite Rikishi, but like, yeah, I want him to get back to Ozeki. More than that, I just want him to get a Yusho, but I don't even think that's going to happen. Like these late career. I think the fact that Terunofuji had his amazing comeback, dropping all the way down the divisions and coming all the way back up and rising to Yokozuna, makes it feel like that's a thing you can root for, but it's more like, no, no, no. The reason the Terunofuji story is so amazing is because that doesn't happen.
Yeah, because it's so rare. And I think personally for me, the true happy ending would be Takakeisho gets to retire, get his elder stock. Asanoyama takes his spot as like the seasoned Ozeki, but I think that is just kind of a pipe dream at that point.
Right, and especially because, like, I don't know. I mean, he's saying all the right things in interviews too, and talking about how he needs to adapt his style for his body. But like, the thing that he was always the greatest at, in my opinion, is how his quick twitch muscles and how quickly he moved, how much mass he hangs on his frame in a tachiai. He always won the tachiai every single time, and that's fine. And he can still do that, to be honest, with pretty much every wrestler in the top division or whatever. But like being a vertical wrestler, a forward backwards guy as you get older is a lot harder. That's all I'm trying to say. A lot of times you age better when you are a Mawashi man. And I understand like Tamawashi's a freak. He won a Yusho at 37 or whatever, but I would just like to keep in mind Tamawashi's latest performances over the last year or so. Like what happens when you are an Oshidashi man who is coming into his 30s.
Yes, and you know what? Asanoyama is clearly still wildly talented. He got all the way back up to Komusubi. I think he can get up to Sekiwake at least.
Yeah, especially
And then from
all it
there,
takes
we
at
just
this
kind of have
point.
to see.
Yeah, at this point, it's like you were talking about being afraid about a potential slip up from Abi. Like that's all it takes, a slip up from Abi and Asanoyama just sitting there waiting in the wings.
Yep. Yeah, I think he's experienced enough. He can take advantage of that. He knows. I mean, he knows the numbers at this point. It's pretty easy when you only have to slide up one slot.
Exactly. Yep. And he's already been fighting all these guys, so it's not like any of that's going to be a surprise. But one guy he's not necessarily been fighting consistently, or any of them, is Onosato. And this is fine. I'm going to say this. This is the correct ranking. There was no one else who deserved to get there because Tommy Fuji was 8-7 from M2, so he only should have gone up one. Daisho, they really wanted Daisho to go 7-8 so they could slide him into Komusubi, but he went 6-9, so they had to drop him to one. There was no one else unless they wanted to massively over promote Takayasu, just because that was someone no one was going to complain about. So instead, Onosato has the jetpack. He's now in Sanyaku, but it's coming right off the heels of another friggin' scandal, an underage drinking scandal where he was forcing underage stablemates to drink, and it of course got covered up, and it's exhausting at this point. JSA, I just want the leadership to retire en masse, and I'm so sick of this. It's taking the fun out.
No, yeah. I mean, it's a bummer because I think the details that I personally have heard or read about is that the stable master, I believe, was the one who brought it forward. He cooperated. It makes sense not to punish him the same way as the Miyagino stable. I get that. But then Onosato still didn't really receive any punishment. Still got to Komusubi, where I had mentioned this before the podcast, that with that, the way he's with that action, you show him by not promoting him into the Sanyaku, who are supposed to be the peak of professionalism and like the best. And maybe you bump him down a level and let Tommy Fuji take that slot, or Daisho, maybe you don't quite demote him as much, just to show Onosato like there is a consequence for what you did.
I mean, the way you put that That's perfect. It's about showing him, and the JSA, yeah, a braver JSA would be willing to take the flack for like people like going nuts and being like, "How could you leave Daisho at Komusubi?" And because they would, because there would be people out there throwing a hissy fit about that. But then going on record and being like, "No, we want to show him that you have to be right to get this. This is a privilege, not it's not something given that you just get it by the numbers." Man, I love that, Nick.
Yeah, like the Sanyaku are supposed to be the example to everybody else, and then you show them like, hey, you didn't get this because of what you did, and then that shows everybody.
Yeah, yeah, and because yeah, because the only thing I've seen, and this makes me like him even more, whatever. But Sumo had said something about, I guess there was a in a back um when the scandal had actually happened but was being covered up, so not when it like came out. uh there was apparently a an incident in on the tour of Terunofuji picking Onosato for Butsugari Keiko, chest lending or whatever, which is traditionally actually like hazing, right? You see these guys get exhausted. It's where there was that thing where Tobizaru like passed out from it and stuff like that. It's a so long story short, it's like Terunofuji took it on himself to punish Onosato because he knew what was going on, but everyone, because it's the JSA, keeps their lips shut. But Terunofuji, this the way I'm telling myself the story in my head, which may not be true, is that like this happens, everyone decides to cover it up. Terunofuji goes out on his own, is like, well, I'm gonna make this kid suffer because screw that, and then has him go through this brutal Butsugari Keiko. So I kind of like that. If Teru is like, fine, we don't have to talk about it, but you're gonna get some kind of punishment, and it's gonna be physical if it comes from me.
No, I think that would 100% make sense because I do feel like some of those organizations, like that's how they handle it. You're not going to get a public punishment, but you're going to do that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, yeah, I'm with you. And then, like, again, no one's saying that by the numbers he doesn't deserve to be Komusubi. It's just we're just tired. That's all. We're just tired. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Beyond that, though, so we don't have time to do the entire Bonds cake because we've been going for a long time. Um, but some dark horse candidates, I'm gonna throw out a handful of them to you, and maybe we just kind of do around those. Again, there's tons of guys we want to talk about, but hopefully they just punish us for this and start the tournament really well. But Tommy Fuji, we already mentioned, is it ever going to be his time? He is again getting frozen out as we see people like Onosato get the jetpack and now rise over him, and he is still waiting in the wings to try to get into that Sanyaku. He's now M1. I don't know if he can challenge for it. Also as the heir apparent to Terunofuji in Isegahama stable. Daisho, we talked about this last tournament was his first losing record in like over a year or something like that. So he's down there at M1 challenging. And then also a couple old guard guys. Tobizaru's there at M3, and Takayasu has risen up to M3 yet again. Is this is this finally the time for Takayasu? Spoiler, it's not. And I say that because I'm so sad. But what do you think for dark horse candidates?
Um, God, I really am leaning towards Daisho. He can obviously handle the Sanyaku. He's been fighting positively against him forever. It'll. I think the two tricky ones will be for him are Tobizaru and Takayasu.
Hmm.
But honestly, everybody else around him, I think he can handle pretty easily.
Hmm.
He's not going to get, he's not like a make sure 10 where he's going to clean up on all the lower guys and
Yep.
rest of the top. But I still think he can do it enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so
He's
I'd lean
obviously
towards,
elite. Yeah.
and obviously it always depends too on which Meisei shows up. He might derail Daisho and Takayasu and those guys from being able to get there because he beats them all.
Yep.
Or he's going to go like 5-10.
Yeah, no, he's gonna go 5-10 with wins against Terunofuji, Takakeisho, Hoshoryu, Kotozakura, and then inexplicably someone like Toki Hayate. Yeah,
Yeah, he'll lose to like Hirodeumi,
yeah,
Koto Shoho.
yeah. It is madness. And then speaking of it, because you did mention one thing, so even like we'll kind of bleed into this idea of surprise contenders too. But when you talk about someone feasting on low ranker wins, Takeru Fuji, I think, correctly ranked, rising to Maegashira 6. But can he do it again?
I I don't know. Like we don't know enough about him to say whether or not he could do it. like you said, he's 100% appropriately ranked. The people at this level should be more difficult than his first like 8 or 9 matches the last time.
Hmm.
But he beat some really solid contenders last time, so it makes me think that at the very least he should clean up everybody around him.
Hmm.
And then it's an absolute mystery for me of whether or not he can take the Sanyaku again.
Right. Yeah, and because we'll find out because we thought he got appropriately tested by the end there, and he beat Wakamoto Haru. That's great. He beat Kotono Waka at the time. That's awesome. But he did lose to Hoshoryu. He did lose to Asanoyama. Like I don't know. I mean, he fought good fights, but there's a mix in there. He's going to have to fight a lot of those guys again. But like some of the guys he's gonna fight, he has beaten Onosato. He has beaten Gonoyama. He has beaten Abi. But what he's not going to get is what his first 8 days were, which I'm going to run this off for you again real quick. Dayamami, Endo, Roga, Myogiru, Tokihayate, Churanoumi, Shononoumi, Ryuden. Well, Endo's not in the division anymore. Dayamami's not in the division anymore. Myogiru's not. You know what I mean? So those those matches ain't coming. Instead of fighting against those kind of guys, it's going to be fighting against someone like Takanosho, who can he beat? Yes. It's going to be fighting against someone like Onosho, who can he beat? Yes. But the question is, when he's fighting that caliber of guy every day, then does he keep it up? I don't know.
Well, and it'll be interesting too because he'll have to fight, I think, more of a varied style up here. Like he's gonna have to fight Midori Fuji. Has he ever fought somebody that small, that strong?
Mm-hmm.
Then again, Meisei, Mitakeumi, Nishikigi, like these, none of these people fight the same, and they all fight well.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, you're super right. It's interesting that like for instance, if you watch a lot of Makushita, um, you kind of see two styles of fighting. You just see dudes who are big and oshidashiing, or you see guys who are little and are going for leg sweeps and shoulder throws. Um, and so it's not until you get to these elite levels that you find the guys who are truly blessed with a bountiful toolbox, you know? For obvious reason, if someone has a lot of ways they can win, it's really hard to prepare to fight against them, so they rise up the ranks. Like it's interesting how in sumo there truly aren't that many guys who can win in a lot of ways because the ones that can all end up in Makuuchi.
Yes.
Um
Uh,
yeah, oh go on.
oh, okay. Sorry, I now remember what I was to say. So he is also very quickly hitting the ceiling of people that you can muscle through, and which is most of what we saw for
Yeah.
his first. Honestly, almost all of his matches last time it was primarily he didn't need a lot of technique because he's so strong. He was able to just toss everybody around, but he's kind of hitting the point where you could do that consistently where you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna need to start pulling a lot of stuff out of your tool belt, which we saw little glimpses of it last time. So
Yep.
he has it. We'll have to see if he can do it all the time.
Exactly. That's all. We're not saying he can't do it. We're saying we need to see it because, like Abi, if Abi didn't have that lateral quickness, you're looking at a guy who's probably a Juryo wrestler. You know what I mean? Like, it's the lateral quickness that saves that guy. I think it'll be the same thing for Takeru Fuji. He has the lateral quickness. So instead of Abi keeping his opponents at a distance and bludgeoning them, this is going to be Takeru Fuji closing the gap and trying to overmuscle them. But if that doesn't work, he's going to need to show that he can break an opponent's grip, move laterally, and attack from the sides, stuff like that. Um, Beyond that, I do want to throw out one more thing. Just I don't know, not to be a bummer or whatever, but um, as an aside, Oshoma is now up. Another guy who has actually a really bad violent scandal that has just kind of been covered up and brushed under the rug. So personally, I'm ticked off in our current climate to even see him at Makuuchi. Um, I hope that I hope that if he does well, he comes out and makes some statements about how he is trying to become a better person, how he's changing his behavior in his heya and stuff like that. But if I don't see that, I'm rooting against the guy. I'm just gonna say that as far as newcomers, and then besides that, like the guys at the bottom of the Bansuke, this time there is not a Takeru Fuji. Last time we had a little bit of an inkling that he was going to do well. Again, I thought 10 wins. I didn't think 13-2 and breaking a centuries record. But I really don't see anyone like welcome back Takara Fuji. We love it. But I don't welcome back Mitoryu. He's been looking good in Juryo, but I don't know. It really does feel like the JSA, while there are some things that are frustrating, has gotten the rankings right such that I think that the dudes at the bottom are kind of going to get beat up, and it's the dudes at the top who are going to be contenders. Surely someone's going to come out of the M11 to M17 range because they're going to beat up on people. But I would think probably that's going to be someone like maybe more veteran like Hokuto Fuji, or maybe it's an opportunity for Nishiki Fuji to shine again. Or we've seen Ichi Yamamoto feast on people in the lower ranks in the past. I don't know, but this time I don't expect anyone there. I very much expect that top 1/3 to 1/2 of the Bonsuke to be the story.
Yeah, and those are actually the exact ones I was looking at. I think
Ha!
Hakata Fuji, Nishiki Fuji, I could see maybe like 11 wins at that rank. Could, if they do
Mm-hmm,
well.
mm-hmm,
Ichi Yamamoto, I could see getting 10.
mm-hmm.
But like you said, none of them are going to really truly like contend for the top.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good chance for them to get promoted.
Right, exactly. And so I don't know. Yeah, I'm not going to fight you on any of these because I have no idea at the bottom, but someone's going to do it. Someone's getting double digits. Someone's getting a Kanto show. I don't know who it is.
I'm going for Nishiki Fuji just because I'm heavily biased towards him.
Choo choo. The train is so far away, but it's coming back, Nick.
But he can still catch it.
He can catch it. Um, and then I'm gonna bounce down. We're gonna do a quick roundup. So, like in Juryo, Endo's down there now, which I want to see if this is a wake up call. I don't know that he's healthy, but that's interesting. Myoguru, same story, but he's down there. Um, and as far as the guys who are considered Juryo guys, like I'm very intrigued to see if Asakoryu, who is sort of our little muscle man down there, can he make his way up now? He's at Juryo 4. But obviously, the big stories are that Wakataka Kage is at J6 currently, and he did not do what we wanted him to do last time, frankly, which is, I don't know if that's because the injuries are, he's still shaking off rust or whatever, but I, he's at J6. At least expected him to be contending for that Juryo Yusho and wind up at the top, which he was the first half of the basho and not the second. And then same thing can be said for Hakuoho, who just ground out an 8 and 7, I believe, in Juryo last time, so he's only at J8. But again, we know those guys when healthy are way better than this, but are they even healthy? I don't know. And Hakuoho has the mental stuff of now being in Isegahama and having his training time severely reduced because Isegahama has like approximately 42,000 Rikishi living in that friggin' house. Um, I think I saw a report that like the new guys, the Miyagino guys, are like sleeping in the training floor, like in the room with the clay. Like that, come on, that mental health has got to be wrecked. This is just not the right way to handle any of this, but such is life. Um, and then just for new guys down there, there are some guys I'm excited about. Onokatsu is there, another college star, and he's been blitzing his way up the ranks, but he's the one I'm waiting for. When he gets to Makuuchi, he's the one who I expect to have a chance of going on a Takeru Fuji like run of being a physical force that surprises everyone. But also Kaze Keno down there. He's at J14 and kind of was sort of the pride of Oshiogawa, but I believe he got injured. He had a great start, and then things kind of derailed, and now he looks like he's kind of slowly building back up. Hopefully, this can be a story more in the vein of Kotozakura than a story in the vein of, I don't know, like Hakuyozan, someone who had a lot of promise and struggled. Of any of those names, any particular storylines you're intrigued by in Juryo, Nick?
Well, I guess just kind of touch on the two that I'm the most familiar with is clearly the Wakataka Kage Hakuoho, where maybe they're hitting some rust, maybe there's some issues. They just didn't perform. I expected those two to be like basically clean house. There's maybe a lot more going on, but I didn't expect them to see any barriers truly to performance until like Megashira 8 for either of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like there's a lot going on, especially for Hakuoho. He's super young. He's had all these rapid changes where he was like the star of the stable. Now, like you said, now he's being treated like brand new. Where it's like, no, he went head to head with Takakeisho and actually got real close to winning. Like maybe like that would throw me off as well.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And because he's so young, is he even 20 yet? Did he turn 20 this year? He probably
I want to
did,
say
but
he just turned 20.
yeah, but still, he's crazy young, man. Like to be dealing with all this crap. Um.
August of 2003, so he's almost 21.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So he is 20. Okay. So fair enough. But like, still, it doesn't mean he's old. He's not a veteran. Yeah. So we'll see. I also want to see those guys come back. And so we'll see what happens in Juryo. I'll do a quick Makushita for one specific reason, but won't really go lower than that. We'll touch on them during the tournament if we can. If anyone's exciting. But down in Makushita, like a guy like Kayo from Okinawa is kind of slowly trying to make his rise, and that's exciting. Kiryuko is another muscle man. I always like watching the muscle man. Dai Seizon is making another run at it. He's up at Makushita 3. He's the guy who I think he's the only Chinese Rikishi right now. He's from Inner Mongolia, so like you're gonna see a lot of the same fundamentals that you would see from the Mongolians traditionally. But Inner Mongolia is part of China, so he is flying the flag for China here. The more important thing, I mean, well, actually, as I scroll through, there's a ton of interesting guys in Makushita: Tenshoho, Wakaikari, Otsuji, Yoshi. But the one that we all actually care about is our beloved hope Aonishiki. He is now all the way up to Makushita 40. So because he went 6-1 and didn't win the yusho last tournament, he got upset by was it Kaze Keno? Whatever. No, it wasn't. I don't know. I can't even remember, but it was someone else good. But he he is now in his career. He is 20-1. He's only lost one match in his entire career. So he's probably looking at best case scenario 2 rounds in Makushita. But this is it. This is where he's fighting other elite young talents, where he's fighting veterans who are on the way down but have a massive backlog of skills and heavy repertoire. I'm extremely excited to see him tested at this level. This is our Ukrainian refugee making a run in sumo, just an awesome story, and the guy who we see as sort of the current heir. At least I see him more as the heir than Shishi, who is another Ukrainian fighting in Juryo right now. The guy fighting in the line of Baruto, Tochinoshin, Aoyama, these Eastern European guys, which we really don't see in sumo anymore. Like we had that golden age of it, and now he is like reinvigorating me for that. So very excited for that. Any thoughts on our boy Aonishiki, Nick?
Like you said, I'm really hoping he can cruise through, and I think he will. I have, again, it's another person I'm heavily biased towards, with like the spiritual successor to Ichinojo, but
Yeah.
we have to temper it a little bit because this is going to get much more difficult, considering how truly little experience he actually has with sumo.
Yeah. Like
But I think he'll do it.
yeah, and like again, like maybe another 6-1, so that next time he's in like the Makushita 7 range. You know what I mean? But like should be good. I'm excited. I love his stable master, the former Aminishiki. And the thing Onosho is really good. That's his stablemate, who's another young, exciting prospect. But they do have no big veterans in his stable. Similar to when a listener has talked to us in the past about we're maybe too hard on Oho because he kind of like from a very young age has had to be the veteran in his stable. So we'll see if he hits some rocks here. But like I said, Aminishiki is an excellent veteran to be learning from. So we'll see how that goes. Regardless, we're both extremely excited for the basho. But now, Nick, who's your pick? Who do you think's getting it done?
Shoot, that's tough. Honestly, if it's not Terunofuji, I would like to either see Kotozakura or Daisho.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about who we'd like to see, I'm obviously on the Takayasu train till I die. But no, it's Teru. Swan song. Let's get to 10. Let's wrap it up. Listeners, throw down in the comments who do you think is winning, and really what I'm interested in. Like, I want to see all your picks or whatever, but like, what do you guys think about the Teru story? Like, does he need to get one more before he's going to retire? Is he just going to keep trying until he does? Is this the end no matter what? I just like this is such an important era for sumo. And Teru, I'm gonna be honest, Teruno Fuji is the reason I watch sumo, right? Like when he came up the first time and then fell all the way down. And really, when I would say I was truly like invested in sumo was watching him make his climb back up, like from the bottom divisions, like up into. I remember like reading I think it was a Mainichi Shinbun article when he finally made it back to Makushita and stuff like that. So for me anyway, this is huge. And if this is the end, this is the biggest thing I will be watching in my sumo fandom career. So very curious what other people feel about that as well. But for now, thanks for listening, everybody. And let's get ready for this basho.